kind of hard to put the question together, but I've been having discussions for quite some time now with a few people, and they believe that that people are born homosexual, that they don't have any choice in the matter, and I argue against that. I believe that people choose those things, but they used kind of my situation as an example that I struggle, and I have struggled with premarital sex. I'm celibate now, but it's something that I've struggled with for, years and years, unfortunately. And I don't really hide it now. I kind of use it as a tool to tell people, hey, like, you can fight these things. Like, you don't have to give in. I kind of use it as a testimony a little bit.
Good for you.
And, oh, thank you. I hate it about myself, but I definitely, I was tired of, like, not being honest with people on why I believe what I believe. So, but they kind of used that against me a little bit, and kind of made me stumble, meaning, like, in my thought process, they were like, well, how do you explain your urges? I heterosexual, but my urges to have sex before I'm married and struggling with it. How was I not born that way? And I can't. I don't know how to answer that. Or
well, it's not. I don't. In a certain sense, it's a clever question and a fair question, I guess. I can see why people would ask it, but in a certain sense, it's not that difficult to respond to. Well, let me ask you a question, though. Do you happen to have the Tactics book?
I do.
10th anniversary edition?
Of course.
Okay.
You have to have the latest.
Well, there is a whole section in there, and I'm trying to remember if it's in footnotes or if it's in the main body. And there's a whole section about this question, about whether people are born gay. All right. And the answer is there's no evidence scientifically that that's the case. There is no gay gene, and there is no evidence that homosexuality, not only are you not born with it, but that it's immutable. And in fact, the common perspective nowadays is that sex is very fluid. And I mean, from the perspective from the left, is that sex is fluid. You could go from this to that, the other thing, whatever. It's very different from the way they used to argue. I'm born that way and it's immutable, so therefore it can't be wrong. Now, there are all kinds of problems with that approach. Even if you were born that way, and even if it would be immutable, that wouldn't necessarily mean it's not wrong. Because if that were the case, one could argue, and some do, regarding different things that most people would consider to be aberrant. Hey, why couldn't somebody say, I was just born angry, I was born violent? And that does seem to be the case about some people. Is that an adequate justification for their behaviors? There's a fallacy that's going on called the is-ought fallacy, but you don't have to get all philosophical. It just doesn't seem to be sound just because that's the way allegedly one was born, that the behavior that comes natural for them is morally okay. In fact, arguably, and this is the point that you were making earlier, there are all kinds of things that could be natural for us that we have to fight against because, though natural, they're not right. And you were talking about premarital. Pardon me?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's all right. I have more to say about that.
No, go on, please.
This would be the one problem, though. I mean, there's a couple of problems, so I'm offering a couple of different thoughts. Even if they were right, I mean, I'll speak to your specific question in a minute. It's natural for you. Why isn't it natural for them? But let's just say it was natural for them. That doesn't mean that the behaviors don't entail or there aren't moral restrictions involved with the exercise of the desire. Maybe that's the better way to put it. So let's say, okay, your heterosexual desire is natural for you, and for the sake of argument, their same-sex desire is natural for them. Nevertheless, that doesn't follow then that whatever you desire to do, you can do because it's
Right.
natural. And you've made the point yourself, and this may be a step, point out. I know that it is natural for me to be sexually attracted to men, but I'm not married, and therefore it is not right. I have to say no to that desire. Okay? Does that make sense to you? To your friend you're talking. Well, okay, then so if it turns out that your desire is natural, it still might mean that it's appropriate for you to say no to a natural desire. So that's part of the difficulty here. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, it seems pretty obvious that a woman would be born with a desire for the opposite sex sexually because it is the opposite sex that is a natural, native, appropriate physical partner for her sexually. And you don't need the Bible to know that. That's just
Right.
common sense, just open your eyes kind of thing. Okay? But that clearly is not, or let me put it this way, it is not clearly the case for same-sex attraction. That seems unusual. We're not going to put a moral thing on it at this particular point, but let's just say that seems unusual. So for me to say, and I'm speaking autobiographically here, as you have said, it is natural for me, given the body that I was born with, to be sexually attracted to the opposite sex, which is the complement for my body sexually.
Right.
That makes sense. It doesn't make sense that someone would be sexually attracted to someone else they are not designed to have sex with. And you could use the design thing, you could cash this out in theological or non-theological terms. Either God designed you there that way or Mother Nature designed you that way. Regardless, this is however you were made to fit the opposite sex, not the same sex. So same-sex attraction doesn't make sense in light of the way you were made. To claim then that their same-sex desire is natural for them, that they were born with it, doesn't make sense given the body they were born with. Okay?
Right.
And if they were born with the same-sex desire, this would have to suggest that it's built into their genes somehow. But this has never been discovered. There has never been a gay gene discovered, and this is what you'll find in the footnote or wherever in Tactics.
I think it's chapter 17, right? Inside Out. Is that correct?
I don't know. It seems to me that it would fit more in just the facts, ma'am, but you'll have to just check because I don't know for sure. But in any event, I give the research, and they do research on twins. And there's something like an 18% correlation on the most famous twin research, that identical twins where one is gay, the other one is gay. Well, that's not the right answer, 18%. If it was genetic, it would be closer to 100%, not 18.
Right.
What 18 shows is there's no correlation. And there wasn't any consideration given for environmental factors either there. Now, you made a comment earlier, well, the way you put it is in your conversation, well, I believe this. And they say, well, we believe this. I believe that you're not born with it. They say, we believe we are born with it, whatever. It doesn't matter what you believe. It matters what the evidence shows is true. And so if it's just like the battle of beliefs, you're not going to get anywhere. But if you say, what is the evidence physiologically that this is something you're born with? The point is all that evidence points in a different direction. It's not something you're born with, and it's obviously true across the board now. It is not immutable. There are lots of people who are heterosexual for much of their lives, and then later on they enter into same-sex relations. and others who had same sex attraction through adolescence or young adulthood that changed. And there's an amazing study that is footnoted there, is documented there in Tactics, that where thousands and thousands were part of this study, and in a certain sense changed, if you will, their sexual attraction without any help from anyone. No one intervened. No one interfered. No one did anything. It just changed. So this particular claim, I believe I was born that way, has no foundation in anything we know about physiology or about the experience of same-sex attraction. You're not born that way. Now, you had used the word choice. I don't think same-sex attraction is a choice. I don't think you're born that way, and I don't think it's a choice. It's like a lot of other desires that we have. They are things that we develop over time through a number of different circumstances. All right. So, I mean, when I don't want to get too explicit here, but there are lots of desires that we have that change over time and are there are foods that people eat, all right, that characteristically kids don't like, but adults develop a taste for. That's what we say. It's a developed taste, right? It's an acquired taste. And okay, the old joke, what's the difference between broccoli and boogers? Kids won't eat broccoli, right? Okay, well, they my kids always ate broccoli, from the beginning, and not the other, fortunately, as far as I know. But the point is that for most people, their desires, tastes, preferences do change over time based on certain influences, And so this is true about sexual appetites as well. There are different things that will affect it. Many people males with same-sex attraction can chart the genesis of that attraction to when they were physically abused when they were younger, and something happened inside. So there is a developmental feature there. I'm not saying it's true in every single case, but the point I'm making is this is developmental. It is not physiological. All right, and so though. There may be a choice in the way we respond to our sexual appetites, as you discussed earlier, in your own case, or even someone with same-sex attraction. That's a choice, but to have the appetite is not a choice. Right. The appetites can come from different places. Heterosexual appetites are part of the natural structure of being human. Otherwise, human beings would not reproduce very effectively. Right. Same-sex attractions don't fall in that category. So it doesn't make sense to say it's natural, you were born with it, and it turns out there is no evidence that's the case, but quite the opposite, that it's something fluid based on other circumstances. So, I think there's a kind of a broad way of responding to this. There's a number of different factors involved, but maybe that will kind of get you out of the lurch here when people raise the issue. I think the way I'd put it to them is it obvious to you? Maybe I'd ask this to somebody who raised the issue. Let me just start here. I'm just going to call my friend Fred for the purpose of this discussion. I don't know why Fred, but I just pulled it out so to speak.
I always use Frank for some reason.
Okay, Frank. Okay, that was my dad's name. Okay, Frank, is it obvious to you that I, as a male, would naturally be attracted to a female? Is that obvious to you? If they said no, and I would ask them, how would you expect me to reproduce? Is reproduction natural for human beings? Then how would I be expected to reproduce if I wasn't naturally attracted to? Okay, I get your point. I'm hoping they're going to give that. Okay, does it seem natural in the same sense that a man would be sexually attracted to another man? Well, I think if a person is fair-minded, they would say, no, I guess I can't make that same point. that it is
Right.
natural. But I do believe I was born this way. So it would be natural in that sense. Okay, great. What would be your evidence, your reasons to think you were born that way? Have you looked at any of the studies on this or something like that? And then I'd go down that route with them to try to help them to see this. So I will give you I'll give you a little tip about this because I've been down this road a number of times on the air over the years with different callers. My general conviction about it is that people who are in I'm trying to think of the nicest way to put this, but I'll just say it. People who are in a sinful lifestyle, and this is not just sexually, but a whole bunch of things. People who are participating in a sinful lifestyle do it because they want to. And what they
Right.
do is they are trying to sanitize their behavior with different types of arguments that make it look like what they're doing is okay. But the arguments don't work, as I've demonstrated. Oh, well, it's okay for me to do this because it's natural for me. You do what's natural for you. I do what's natural for me. Of course, you pointed out you don't do what's natural for you. You're not married, or you ought not do it, and so you resist. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so, it ain't going to work that way. Well, once that's dealt with, then they move on to something else. Other kind of I'm not hurting anybody, faux justifications. Well, the real issue is not that they really believe they're doing something just fine. Deep down inside, they just want to do what they want to do. And they're looking for a way to feel better about that or to sanitize the behavior. And I think that's what's genuinely going on.
I was just really surprised, and we'll call my friend Frank, that Frank says they're a Christian, and they believe that that people are born homosexual, and they say, Frank says, oh, their minds are wired that way. They don't have the capability of fighting it. But we have, one of your speakers, and I'm sorry I forget his name.
Alan Schleman.
No,
Tim Barnett.
He used to be. No, he used to live as a gay man.
One of our speakers, Christopher Ewan.
Yes, Christopher. He chooses not to live that way.
Yes.
And when I say choose, and I know that you explained it, I believe I didn't say it as eloquently, but when I say choose, I have those desires, and yes, I'm not necessarily choosing those desires to have them, but I'm choosing not to act upon them.
Exactly.
And I think that is the choice that we all can make, and Christopher is making that on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And you and I have spoken before about this very thing, saying, it'll be a fight for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And
by the way, that's true of heterosexuals as well.
Right.
Sex is powerful no matter how it's characterized. In healthy sexual desires, unhealthy sexual desires, and I think there's a difference between same-sex attraction and heterosexual attraction, but still, they are powerful and can be abused. I think any expression of same-sex attraction is an abuse of what God has in mind, but at least in the heterosexual arena, there is an alternative. Now, that may be bad news for people who are same-sex attracted, and I don't deny that, and I can be sympathetic to that. But I'll tell you, as a single person, I went 25 years being sexually celibate after I became a Christian. So, it's doable. And if it turned out I never got married, I would have to be sexually celibate the rest of my life. But would it be a struggle? Sure. If not in my physical conduct, it certainly would be in my mental life. And that's just a reality of struggling with the flesh and with sin.